One of the strangest jobs I've ever had was working at an animal shipping company in Florida back in the 90s. This was back when the laws were lax and all kinds of creatures from all over the world were brought in and delivered through our little shipping business. We shipped insects, reptiles, even mammals sometimes. We regularly got anacondas to ship to pet stores or zoos, or even to private buyers. They made quite a showpiece to display. They were massive, easily 15 feet in length, and would take 5 or 6 guys white-knuckling these massive snakes to load them into containers. This particular day started like any other, with the usual hustle and bustle of preparing shipments for delivery. But on this day, I was assigned to work with a guy named Jared. This guy was a creep. You never knew what kind of strange stuff was going to come out of his mouth, and he was unpredictable, always ready to pop off at anyone. He even punched a driver once for stepping on his toe. He knew the boss's family somehow, so he was basically untouchable. We all kind of avoided him as much as we could. Jared was taping up some tarantula containers in the spider room. Yep, I said spider room. We had a spider room. It was a room that was sealed off from the rest of the building with the thought that if one of those high-end spiders got out of its enclosure, mind you, those were basically sealed to-go cups, that they couldn't get out into the main building as easily and lead to a venomous infestation. That room held tarantulas, black widows, even bird eaters before delivery. If you don't know what a bird eater is, and you hate spiders, don't look them up. Our job that day was to load 8 tarantula boxes holding 30 individual containers each, and deliver them to the local exotic pet stores in the area. Jared had finished loading the boxes into the van, and I got the keys. I was checking the delivery paperwork with the keys in the ignition when Jared started laughing like a maniac. I looked up to see a blue-legged tarantula crawling up the console of the van. I threw open the door and stepped out, seeing another on my shin. I kicked it off and saw it scurry across the loading dock back into the building. Jared was laughing his head off, and when he finally stopped snorting, he said he had opened the containers on purpose. I followed him to the back of the van, and he threw open the doors. There were tarantulas everywhere, crawling all over the walls of the van and into the cab. It was a scene straight out of a horror movie, and the whole time Jared is laughing his damn head off. Panic ensued as the spiders darted into the warehouse, their legs moving with lightning speed. I watched in horror as everyone screamed and scattered, desperately trying to avoid the scurrying arachnids. With adrenaline pumping, I grabbed a net and tried to corral the tarantulas before they could escape to the outside world. But the spiders were fast and their movements unpredictable as they skittered across the floor, disappearing into dark corners and crevices. These things were so big, you could hear them on the concrete floor. I will never forget that horrifying sound. For hours we searched for them, combing every inch of the warehouse in a frantic attempt to capture them. But despite our best efforts, most of them escaped. For months, we came across those spiders. You'd move a box and see one skitter away just out of reach, growing visibly bigger as they fed on all the Florida bugs they could find. Even being connected to the owner couldn't cover this horrendous intentional screw-up. Jared was fired that day. You just never know who you're working with until it's too late. To this day, I can't get into a car without thinking of being trapped inside that enclosed space with those massive spiders crawling around. Through college, I worked at a little florist in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. I really loved that job, the flower arranging and care, even the customer service part, because people buying flowers were mostly polite and happy to be celebrating some event or relationship. Even when they needed them for condolences, ordering flowers seemed to give them some sense of purpose during a stressful time. Basically, flowers are for showing love and well wishes. Little did I know that one seemingly perfect recurring order would lead to a nightmare. It all started when I was alone at the front desk one late winter afternoon. A good-looking and undeniably charming guy in his 30s came into the shop. With a heart-melting smile, he introduced himself as Ethan. He oozed confidence and smiled in just the right way. Ethan explained that he wanted to send some monthly flower arrangements of red and white roses to a woman named Sabrina and gave me her address. He asked that the cards be signed from "Your One and Only" and put a credit card on file. I absolutely swooned, feeling so jealous of this Sabrina woman. Who wouldn't want to receive monthly lavish displays of affection from such a put-together guy like Ethan? And the arrangements weren't cheap. They were over $300 apiece. I forgave him for flirting a bit when he asked my name and said he trusted me to be in charge of his flower orders from now on. Each first day of the month, as I ran his card number, I imagined how happy she would be to get her beautiful roses. During the first week of May, I took a few days off for finals. When I came back into work, there was a phone message from Ethan. I had forgotten to pass on the rose order. The message was short. I trusted you. He had canceled the recurring order. 2 weeks later, we got a visit from the police asking about flower orders to a Sabrina Weiland who lived on... But before the detective could finish, I knew the address. Sabrina had been found with roses, red and white ones, shoved deep into her throat. A garland of flowers covered the hidden ligature markings around her neck. As they combed through her life for clues, they stumbled upon the recurring flower deliveries with our florist cards. We were in shock as we described Ethan and gave the detectives all the information we had on file for his order, which wasn't much. The credit card had been issued under a false name. Ethan seemed to be good at hiding in plain sight, despite his good looks. I was horrified to think I had unwittingly played a role in Sabrina's tragic demise. I drove the 5 hours home when the semester was over, and my mom greeted me at the door. She hugged me, and I remembered the relief I felt just being there with her, until she playfully pushed me away. "You've been holding out on me," she said, pointing to a large bouquet of white and red roses arranged on the kitchen table. I felt a pit in my stomach and tore open the card with clammy hands. "From your one and only." I tuned back into my mom's voice coming from the other room. "And you should have seen the delivery guy. He was so good looking." As a hospitality worker in New Orleans, I thought I was immune to the city's eerie atmosphere. I've heard hundreds of ghost stories over the years. The city is so haunted that it's almost strange to find a place where there are no ghost sightings or strange sounds. But some of the creepiest stories I have are from the months I spent part-time housekeeping at a historic bed and breakfast in the heart of the French Quarter. This historic inn is one of the most active haunts in the city. Everyone warned me about the laundry room. Not to go in there alone, but that's tough when you're only one of 2 housekeepers on a shift. You're bound to end up there on your own at some point. The laundry and storage rooms are housed in what used to be the old carriage house adjacent to the lobby. The carriage house is where past owners would store their carriages and horses, so it was a good-sized building. The bed and breakfast forms a U shape with a courtyard in the middle, and the courtyard has chairs and tables to unwind with a drink from our restaurant's bar after a long day of sightseeing. From the lobby, you can see across the courtyard to the storage room, which has a sheer curtain across the front window. Most of the original carriage house survived a fire, but lore says one of the servants went missing that night, believed to have perished in the fire. The owners at the time refused to accept any responsibility for his death and kicked his wife and child out into the street. My first unexplainable encounter took place early one afternoon when I had a large load of sheets to wash. I had my earpods in and was completely lost in thought when the washer door slammed closed on my wrist. The force was strong, and I stumbled forward as another shove hit my shoulders forward into the front of the machine. Needless to say, I was alone in that laundry room, and with the only entrance in front of me, there was no chance anyone had snuck in behind me. My wrist was purple for a week, and I never went back in there alone. Another carriage house incident took place in the late evening. We had a couple sitting in the courtyard drinking and talking as the sun was setting. They were lost in conversation, and I was facing them through the window talking with the night receptionist, Carol, and we were in the lobby. Behind her, across the courtyard, I caught something in the carriage house window, watching the couple from around the sheer curtain. The couple's backs were to the carriage house, oblivious to the hideous face of something hovering behind them, just a thin pane of glass separating them from it. My face must have given me away, and Carol followed my gaze, then turned back really fast. In a panicked voice, she told me, "Look away." And I did, but I could still see it out of the corner of my eye. What I'd seen was decay incarnate, the vague shape of a person's head now almost entirely shadow, hollow holes where eyes and mouths should have been, gaping vacantly through the glass. "If it catches you looking at it, it won't leave you alone." She told me one of the old housekeepers had started seeing it off property in the streets and quit because she was afraid it was going to follow her home. The last terrifying thing I witnessed happened just before dinner service. We had a cozy little restaurant on the ground floor with 10 tables, plus the courtyard I've already mentioned, for overflow seating. One of my last duties in the late afternoon was to cover each table with our signature black tablecloths and place a tall taper candle in the center of each table to help out the servers. When I was done, I lit each candle and turned from the empty quiet of the dining room towards the busy kitchen. When the air suddenly went cold, I felt something growing behind me and turned to see what looked like black static fly through the center of the dining aisle. Every candle had been inexplicably tipped over, their wicks alive with bright flames, their wax pooling on the table below. I watched frozen in horror as the spread of each flame ate through the cloth. Each table looked identical, the candles on their sides, the flames licking at the tables as the fires grew. I called for help, and from the kitchen the whole staff poured into the dining room to put out the flames. What was possibly most unsettling was that the smell that lingered in the dining room wasn't that of burnt cloth or wood or even fire, but of a lingering scent of burnt death. A putrid, nauseating odor that hung heavy in the air, choking us with its suffocating intensity. The chef reflexively asked me what happened, but he'd been there for years. He knew there was something sinister haunting that bed and breakfast. I've left that place and now 10 bar at a different hotel, but I'm still in contact with friends that work there. Nothing's changed. If anything, things have become more active. But the owner pays well, so the staff stays. Guests report seeing and feeling things all the time, and that's a big part of the place's allure. But if you ask me, it's only a matter of time before something catastrophic happens there. Again.